You don't feel lonely, you feel different. And the difference didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly, underneath your awareness, until one day you noticed you react to people in ways you never used to. You're less patient, less open, less expressive. You tell yourself you've matured, but what actually changed is more subtle than that. Loneliness does not just hurt emotionally, it reorganizes the nervous system. When social connection becomes inconsistent or absent, the brain shifts into threat detection mode. The amygdala increases sensitivity. The prefrontal cortex reallocates cognitive resources towards scanning for rejection. This is not drama, it is regulation. Your system adapts to protect you from anticipated social pain. The problem is that protection slowly becomes personality. At first, the change looks harmless. You become more independent, more self-contained. You stop expecting much from others. But beneath that independence is attachment conditioning recalibrating itself. When bids for connection go unanswered enough times, the brain updates its predictive model. It assumes distance is safer than vulnerability. You don't consciously decide to withdraw. Your reward circuitry simply stops lighting up in the same way around people. Research on perceived social isolation shows something unsettling. The brain under loneliness interprets neutral social cues as negative more frequently. A delayed text feels intentional. A quiet room feels like exclusion. The threat response heightens even when no threat exists. Over time, this cognitive bias reshapes identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who doesn't quite belong. This is where it gets interesting. Because loneliness doesn't just make you sad, it makes you vigilant. And vigilance changes behavior. You speak less, but you monitor more. You share less, but you analyze more. Your mind becomes like a smoke detector with a dying battery, overly sensitive, chirping at imagined danger, exhausting everyone nearby, including you. The system was designed to keep you safe. Instead, it keeps you guarded. You may have noticed a new sharpness in your reactions. Small social missteps irritate you more than they should. That isn't pettiness, it is nervous system fatigue. Chronic social isolation elevates baseline cortisol. When your body remains in low-grade stress, tolerance narrows. You call it low energy for people. Biologically, it is resource depletion. But here is the part most people miss. The longer loneliness persists, the more it rewires your identity preservation mechanisms. Humans are meaning-making creatures. If connection is scarce, the mind must explain why, and explanations harden into self-concepts. I'm just not a people person. I prefer being alone. I don't need anyone. Some of that may be true, but some of it is adaptation masquerading as authenticity. The most dangerous shifts are the quiet ones. You stop reaching out first. You decline invitations automatically. You rehearse conversations in your head, but avoid having them in real life. Each avoidance reduces immediate anxiety. The reward circuitry reinforces the relief. The brain learns distance equals safety. Safety equals relief. Relief equals repeat. Over months, that loop crystallizes. The social self becomes smaller. The inner world becomes louder. And because no one interrupts the narrative, it grows unchecked. You become hyper-aware of how you're perceived, yet increasingly invisible. That paradox is not personality. It is a trauma imprint of repeated disconnection. There's a concept in psychology called social baseline theory. It suggests that the human brain expects proximity to others as a default condition. When alone, the brain perceives tasks as more demanding and threats as larger. Simply holding a trusted hand has been shown to reduce neural threat responses. The implication is profound. Loneliness does not merely remove comfort, it increases cognitive load. You are working harder than you realize just to feel normal. And working harder for too long changes temperament. You may feel more cynical, less impressed, less hopeful about people. That isn't wisdom, it is anticipatory defense. When you expect disappointment, you blunt expectation altogether. It feels rational, it feels controlled, but it is also constricting. Here is the metaphor that makes this clear. Imagine your personality as a house with windows. Connection opens the windows, air flows, light shifts. Loneliness slowly closes them, not all at once, but one by one to keep the cold out. Eventually, the house feels stable, contained, quiet, but the air becomes stale, and after a while you forget what fresh air feels like. You start believing this stillness is who you are. Around this point, something else happens. You become harder to read. Others sense the guardedness. They hesitate. That hesitation confirms your bias. See, people pull away. In reality, they're responding to microsignals of withdrawal your nervous system broadcasts unconsciously. Loneliness creates the very dynamics it fears. 70% into this process, the cost becomes visible. The same mechanism protecting you from rejection also protects you from intimacy. The hyper-independence that feels strong prevents co-regulation. You don't allow others to stabilize your stress response. You carry everything internally. Over time, that internal load converts into emotional numbness. Not dramatic depression, just a flattening. You laugh less freely. You trust less easily. You disclose less spontaneously. And because the shift was gradual, you rationalize it as growth. But growth expands capacity. This has narrowed it. Here is the uncomfortable question. Who would you be if you stopped bracing? For many people, the idea of softening feels more dangerous than staying guarded, because beneath loneliness there is often an older memory of exclusion, embarrassment, abandonment. The current personality configuration is a shield built around that earlier wound. The shield works. It prevents repetition, but it also prevents new evidence. The nervous system cannot update without exposure to corrective experiences, and corrective experiences require risk, not reckless vulnerability, calibrated openness, small signals that say, I am willing to be seen again. Without that, the predictive model never changes. The brain continues assuming scarcity. The shift back does not start with becoming extroverted. It starts with reducing vigilance, with noticing when your mind interprets ambiguity as rejection, with questioning the automatic story, with allowing someone else to carry part of your emotional weight, even if only briefly. Loneliness may have shaped your recent personality, but it did not reveal your final form. It revealed your adaptive one. There is a difference. The adaptive self is strategic, efficient, guarded. The authentic self is responsive, flexible, connected. If you have felt harder, sharper, more distant than you used to be, it does not mean you have become cold. It may mean your system has been surviving. And survival mode sustained long enough can look like character. The real shift begins when you recognize the pattern without shaming it, when you see the vigilance and understand its origin, when you realize that the independence you pride yourself on may partly be a scar. You don't have to dismantle the shield overnight, but you do have to acknowledge it exists, because the quietest personality changes are the ones we mistake for truth. And if something in this felt uncomfortably accurate, that discomfort is data, not proof that you're broken, proof that your system adapted intelligently. The question now is whether you want to keep living inside the adaptation or whether you're ready to test a different prediction. If this perspective resonated, stay close to this conversation. There's more beneath the surface than most people are willing to examine.